But we're turning to mental health and men's mental health in particular, because June marks Men's Mental Health Month, and from the 15th to the 21st of June, International Men's Health Week will shine a spotlight on the physical and mental well-being of men and boys across Ireland and around the world. This year's theme, One Step at a Time, Progress Not Perfection, encourages men to make small, manageable changes and to seek support when they need it. While awareness around men's mental health has grown significantly in recent years, many still struggle in silence with issues such as stress, burnout, loneliness, financial pressures and feelings of disconnection. Joining me to discuss all these challenges and why more men are now reaching out for help is Linda Duffy, the licensed rapid transformational therapist practitioner. Linda, a very good morning to you. Thanks for being with us on Morning Focus.
Good morning to you, and thanks for having me on.
This month, I mentioned it's Men's Mental Health Month, we've International Men's Health Week. Why are these initiatives still so important? And from your perspective, do you see them having a benefit? Obviously, I suppose the major one is it maybe raises awareness. We're talking about this issue because it ties in around these initiatives, but are there other benefits to them besides that?
Yeah, very good question. Because I think from my perspective, yes, it's important to have these months of awareness, but there's a big difference between moving from awareness to taking action. And that's where I see the gap in that there is a significant gap still between men who are struggling and men who seek support. So while there might have been a significant increase in the number of, men or boys reaching out in the last year specifically, which is absolutely fantastic, there is still a gap in terms of how can we increase more men to reach out, but also just make it normal, deem it more acceptable, because particularly with men, there is still this reluctance to seek help, and it's just trying to bridge that gap between awareness and moving into taking action and making it a comfortable conversation for men to have, because typically stats will show that women are more likely to seek help and speak more openly with their friends. So it's just trying to make it more normal for men, because if it's more normal, it means they're more likely to have that conversation.
And speaking of conversations, I know you've seen a significant increase in the number of men reaching out for support, and particularly this year, which is is positive and is always very much welcome. What's driving it though, Linda? What's behind it? What kind of changes are you noticing that's leading to this increase?
So I think it's men are just more likely to reach out because that they have their fear of being judged is less. And they are moving away from that mindset of, particularly men maybe from the 30 age or a little bit more upwards, they were conditioned and grew up in environments where, men were told to just kind of get on with it, or just man up, or, you can't let people see that you're struggling, or things like that. That as time goes on, we are moving away from that kind of old school mindset, and people are leaning into opportunities where they don't feel judged. And they recognise as well, I think, that everybody in life, we all have struggles, no matter what gender we have, no matter what our background is, or what job we have, or what family we have. We all have challenges. And I think men are now kind of catching up in terms of that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to recognise that I'm struggling, and not leaving it to the point that you're at absolute crisis and then seeking help, that they recognise the signs of something's not right, and I'm not feeling myself. And it can be subtle signs that people have along the way that they just think maybe is normal, but underneath that is that you are actually really struggling.
And there are obviously a myriad of issues and situations that can lead to, I suppose, pressures on your mental health, be it careers, finances, relationships, and expectations and so on. Are there warning signs that loved ones should look out for that might indicate a man is struggling emotionally?
Yeah, and it's again, it's a lot of things that you mentioned there. So if you kind of look at kind of signs that maybe you can kind of keep an eye out, or notice that things maybe are different with a certain individual or somebody that you love or care about. Typically what you'll notice with people is that their sleep might be affected, so they'll typically be sleeping less. They're constantly tired. They're waking up tired, even though they might be getting significant sleep. Another big one is they're just not motivated the way they would have been before. They might be more irritable than usual, so they might be, lashing out at things that they really wouldn't have before. They might be drinking more, they might be smoking more, they might isolate a lot more as well. So you might see that they kind of go into themselves. They're not engaging in conversations maybe they would have been before. Or they might be completely withdrawing from family and friends, or maybe hobbies that they would have typically enjoyed, and they're not doing now. So they might pull back. And physical symptoms, then you might have like more increased headaches. They might have digestive problems, or they just might notice. I know even in myself, like when I get really stressed, my back gets really tense and my lower back gets really tense, and I kind of really stiffen up. So they would be typical physical symptoms along with the sleep that people might notice. But a big one that I see for men when they come to me, it's a line that they have, that they're like, I just don't feel happy and I don't know why.
And in terms of, I guess, in improving their mental health, small lifestyle changes, I guess, can make a meaningful difference, as you touch on, diet, smoking, drinking, and so on. But what are some of the realistic, one step at a time changes men could make to improve their well-being, Linda?
Yeah, and I think it's a really good theme, one step at a time and progress over perfection, because I think we can adapt that to everything in life. It is to kind of just one step in front of the other. So I suppose realistically, if when you have your basics, like you're trying to eat well, get your steps in, things like that, they're all basics and they're all very good. But really, it comes down to, if you want to try and overcome an issue, you have to face it. You have to speak to either a trusted friend or somebody, that is a professional that knows how to deal with these circumstances or deal with the pressures that you are under. Where is your safe space? We can all have lots of friends, but a lot of the time there's only one or two people that we will really let into our lives and kind of be vulnerable with, and let them know what it is that we are really being affected by. So I suppose the strongest, help or that I can suggest is reach out to somebody. There are helplines that you can call that are free, that you can use as your first port of call. You can go to your GP and just explain, what it is that you're feeling or that you're worrying about, or maybe what you're anxious about. Therapists like myself, you can come to me and we can talk through things that are going on in your life. And outside of that, really it's back to basics. Are you doing, journaling and meditation, all those things only work for certain people. A lot of men don't lean into those because they might see them as a bit wishy-washy, or things that women do or girls do, and that's okay, right? But if you really want to tackle an issue, you really have to face it head on and decide that I don't want to feel like this anymore. And that's okay. It is scary when you do therapy, because particularly if you've never done it before, you don't know what's going to come up. You don't know what they're going to ask. You don't know, oh my God, if I'm going to change, how do I change? Will I become a different person? They're all legit fears that, people have. But ultimately, if you want to feel better, nothing changes if nothing changes. So you do have to make little changes in your life to be able to, for them to build up. So as time goes on, you're able to kind of feel better. You're able to feel more motivated. You're able to feel happier. You're able to have less anxiety. You're able to deal with pressures easier, because we do live in a world now that is like, there is a lot of pressure, whether that's financial or, as you said, relationships or careers, or loneliness is a big one now for people, and that's irrelevant to whether you're in a relationship or not, that a lot of people feel really lonely, and that's not a nice thing to feel.
Whilst you are seeing an increase in the number of men reaching out for support, and it does seem over the last number of years, maybe the pandemic and people getting more aware and in touch with their mental health has improved in that regard as well, in terms of men reaching out for support. I do wonder, Linda, whether you've concerns around modern phenomena that may, I suppose, see regression in some of the numbers reaching out for support. Obviously the Louis Theroux documentary, Inside the Manosphere, was something that certainly we spoke about in the show, and garnered a lot of headlines in recent months, and maybe opened the eyes of people who aren't on social media all the time to this phenomena of male influencers and male toxicity, and portraying a vision of, or an image of, a man who certainly is not in touch with their feelings, or certainly wouldn't talk about it. Do you have any concerns around that kind of thing being an influence, and a negative influence on certainly younger males who would be more digital natives, and that they may not be reaching out for help if they are struggling with their mental health, because it would be perceived by that culture as weak?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I fully agree with you. What you're consuming is going to have an influence on how you think and how you act. The same way the people that we're surrounded by are going to influence how we think and how we react to different things. Particularly for the younger generation, they're going to be consuming material online, and there's only so much we can do to kind of prevent that from happening. It then comes back to education. If you're a parent of, a teenager or somebody that you think might be consuming that kind of information online, because more likely than not they are. So it comes down to educating your child on, how do you show up as a man in your life? How do you want your child to be, treat maybe women in relationships or friendships? And that comes down to educating your child on what respect look like. What does healthy conversation look like? What do basic manners look like? And I think if you can kind of show them and model that for them, there's a more chance that it's more likely that they will show up like that in real life. Because I think with social media, it's so hard to, particularly if you are moving in from the 18 years onwards, you can't really stop them from viewing the content that they're viewing online. And the only thing that you can do is educate them in terms of, what real life looks like, what is actual respect look like, what does it sound like, and how does it show up in actions. And that really is the best that you can do, and hope that they kind of take that on board and they have the right people around them that also model those behaviours.
Look, Linda, it's always a pleasure to have you on and discuss this. It's great to see. It sounds like more men are reaching out for support with their mental health, and long may that continue. Thank you for once again joining us on Morning Focus.
Thank you for having me.
That's Linda Duffy, the licensed RTT, Rapid Transformational Therapist practitioner, with us on Wednesday's Morning Focus.